Okay, sociology. So I'm hoping to get back into the groove of things. I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard just because I have a lot of classes. I was also one of the towns in Massachusetts that received a text from the government that so we're back. At least my town is back in step one of phase 3, so some things are shutting down, and it's just, again, it's kind of getting to me mentally. And I'm already a kind of socially distant person, but this has been a lot, to the point where I can't even see um, my family in Luxembourg. So it's hard. So I'm not even gonna lie, it's very hard. So let me get to what I need to get to. So we are moving on to chapter 7. Sorry guys, I've been like a wreck. So we're moving on to chapter 7. This is Deviance, Crime, and Social Control. So one of the things that I'm actually very, very excited for is for us to hopefully get some real good discussion going in our Flipgrid in regards to extra credit opportunities that are going to be coming up. So if you've ever missed a quiz, or if you're missing a number of quizzes, remember, you can miss about 4 and still be okay. Okay, so you need 8 by the time the semester is over. We are already on week 8, so there are going to be weeks where there are 2 quizzes. So those are coming up. They're coming up. Okay, so this week we have 1, but I will say that next week we do have 2 quizzes coming up. So in that week, you could just bust out 2. Some of you might be done. For those of you who continue on with the quizzes, those quizzes aren't for granted, okay? So they will be counted in some way towards your final grade. So if you choose to keep on doing quizzes, that is awesome, okay? So again, we're moving on to chapter 7, Deviance, Crime, and Social Control. As usual, I will always state that the figures in our book are very, very important. So please do not bypass them. Here, we do have a figure that states medical marijuana dispensary, open on Saturday from 12 to 7, closed on Sundays. Washington is one of the several states where marijuana has been legalized, decriminalized, or approved for medical use. We also know a number of other states that have gone through the same process. Arizona, Colorado, Massachusetts, okay? I'm not saying that it's fully legalized here, but it is decriminalized depending on the amount that you are caught with. And you can use it for medical use. Just a little background about myself. I did get my master's degree at Humboldt State University, that is located in the Emerald Triangle in California. And this is prior to it being legalized, decriminalized, or approved for medical use. But again, the Emerald Triangle, Humboldt County, which is part of the Emerald Triangle, is known for marijuana. In fact, while I was in grad school, one of the ways that I paid for grad school was working on a farm. And I'm not going to tell you which kind of farm, but based on what we're talking about, that's the kind of farm, okay? So what are your opinions on medical marijuana? I should throw this actually in a extra credit assignment, right? Should it be legalized? Should it be decriminalized? Should it be approved for medical use? Again, I'm not here to influence any of your thoughts. I'm here to get you to think beyond your own personal experiences, right? So we're using our sociological imaginations in this class, okay? So some of you might have parents who suffer from fibromyalgia. My mom, not only has she had several heart attacks, but she deals with fibromyalgia, diabetes, etc. Okay, so she actually is approved for marijuana use medicinally. to like alleviate, you know, the pain. She's in constant pain, body pain. So marijuana is useful for that. So of course, my opinions based on my experience, I'm definitely down for people using marijuana for medicinal purposes, right? It doesn't only need to be used for fibromyalgia, but it's used for cancer patients, which I totally agree with. Epilepsy, for those who are continuously dealing with epileptic seizures. AIDS, HIV, etc. Okay, so what are your opinions on marijuana? Okay, so let's think. Tattoos, a vegan lifestyle, single parenthood, breast implants, even jogging were once considered deviant, but now are widely accepted in our society. The change process usually takes some time and may be accompanied by significant disagreement, especially for social norms that are viewed as essential. For example, divorce affects and social institutions of family. For example, divorce affects the social institution of the family. And so divorce carried a deviant and also a stigmatized status at one time. However, if we look in society today, right, is divorce considered deviant? Is it considered, in other words, taboo? When we have people who are divorcing left and right in society today, does it still carry a stigma? Okay, is it still deviant to divorce a spouse? Okay, and again, there's several ways to think about this, right? If you grow up in a religious background, specifically like Catholic or Christian, divorce still might be deviant, seen as unlawful, seen as ungodly, right? However, if you are living in the world, right? Not that Christians and Catholics are not living in the world, but if you are not part of those religious circles, right? Divorce might seem like an everyday thing, not a big deal, okay? Marijuana, again, was once seen as deviant and criminal, but US social norms on this issue are definitely changing, okay? And that's where you think, where do you stand on these things, right? Not just marijuana use, but breast implants, Botox, parents choosing to have a child all by themselves, right? Turning to veganism, right? Tattoos, we went over tattoos, right? As a subculture, are tattoos still seen as deviant? And again, just like in religion, right? There are certain circles where tattoos are still seen as deviant, okay? In fact, you probably could find the episode on YouTube somewhere, but there was an episode where Kim Kardashian, and yes, I'm talking about pop culture, and we've went over pop culture in this class, but Kim Kardashian was being interviewed by Wendy Williams on her show. And Wendy Williams asked Kim Kardashian, do you have any tattoos? Okay, and before I give you her response, right, think of the life and the reality that Kim Kardashian is living, that the Kardashians are living in, okay? Try to think about it. We don't live in those realities, right? So we can't be for sure, okay? Just like I can't tell you what a guy is thinking, a man is thinking, right? You can't tell me what a woman is thinking. I can't tell a guy what to do with his body. You can't tell me what to do with my body, okay? So try to think of scenarios that might produce a response, right? So Wendy Williams asked Kim Kardashian, do you have any tattoos? And the response that Kim Kardashian gave was, would you ever put a sticker on a Bentley? Think about that. Would you ever put a sticker on a Bentley? Okay, what is she saying? Okay, she's definitely alluding to class, and we will get to class. She's definitely alluding to that, right? She is part of a class that doesn't agree with body modification in terms of ink. I'm not talking in terms of plastic surgeries and surgeries like that, but definitely in terms of ink, something that is visible on the skin, okay? So it's interesting. There are still circles. Also, Paris Hilton stated something similar to that as well, okay? But I'm trying to think of any, and still using the pop culture example, any kinds of upper class, elite type of person that has a tattoo, a visible one that we know of. And I can't think of them, okay? And when I'm talking about upper class and elite, I'm not talking about new money. There's a difference between generational money and new money, okay? New money, I would consider rappers, this new wave of culture, right? Movie stars, etc. Okay, old money, generational wealth. I'm talking about people who have family that made their fortune and continue to make their fortune off of the labor of other people. And I'm not saying that's wrong or if that's right, but I'm talking about slave labor, you know? So like, look into the backgrounds of a lot of these billionaires today, okay? That whole saying started from the bottom, now we're here isn't necessarily true. I'm not saying that it's not possible, okay? But there are a reason why, again, we went over it in a chapter previous, but there's a reason why Jeff Bezos is where he is. And it's not just because he works hard. I'm not saying he's not working hard. So please be aware of the language that's coming out of my mouth, okay? But you have, these families have backing, financial backing, that generational wealth that most of us don't have, okay? Let's get back into it. I'm sorry for going off on a slight tangent. But think about it, okay? Marijuana was once seen as deviant, just as jogging, breast implants, single parenthood, vegan lifestyles, and tattoos, right? So they were seen as deviant, but US social norms on this issue are changing. So they're no longer necessarily seen as deviant, okay? Much of the appeal of watching entertainers perform in drag comes from the humor inherent in seeing everyday norms violated. This is another figure from our chapter, okay? If you saw individuals in drag, let's say just walking down the street, how would you feel, okay? Would you think that their behavior is violating a certain social norm that we have? And how does that make you feel? Or not, okay? So there are things, again, social norms are definitely changing, but there are still things that are seen as deviant to people and to groups in society, okay? Deviance and social control. Whether or not something is defined as deviant depends on social norms that people develop and use to judge others. What exactly, though, is deviance? And I've been reiterating this term for a while now in this lecture, okay? And what is the relationship between deviance and crime? Deviance is defined as any behavior that fails to conform to the rules or norms of a group of society. In defining norms and rules, society invokes moral code and makes moral judgments about what's appropriate and what's inappropriate behavior. When we, in this class, address deviance, when I address deviance in this class, I'm just talking about behavioral deviance, things that people do, okay? So again, deviance is any behavior that fails to conform to the rules or norms of a group or society. And again, make sure you're paying attention to the news, okay? It's important, especially when we are dealing with, and not just, right, but dealing with deviance. The news won't necessarily claim it as such, but again, we're talking about people's behaviors, right? There are things that people are doing in society that other people don't agree with, okay? In other words, we're talking about deviance. Okay, not crime. Deviance and crime are different, and we will get to the distinction between the two. But we're talking about deviance. Just a quick review. Make sure you guys go over folkways, mores, and laws. Again, we covered this in previous sections, our section on culture. Okay, I believe that's either chapter 3 or chapter 4. Okay. But folkways, again, are informal norms dealing with etiquettes and manners. So deviating from these norms brings short informal sanctioning. So an example of a folkway is me like picking my nose, right? If you caught me picking my nose, right, informal sanctioning, meaning somebody might stare at me in disgust, but it doesn't do anything, okay? Mores are norms that have moral significance. Deviating from these types of norms is more serious and may bring about an outcasting. So, for example, I haven't been in high school for a long time, but coming to class late and then your teacher giving you detention. Okay. Actually, no, that's more of like a law that's built into the schools. So an example of a more, again, cutting someone in line. It's not written down in law anywhere, but it's serious enough that it could bring about an outcasting, right? So you go to a grocery store and instead of waiting behind the line to check out your items, you go into the front and then the manager comes down and says, no, you can't come back here. Okay, there is no law that says that you can't cut people. Absolutely none. Okay, we don't get an etiquette book before we go into Stop and Shop. Okay, and some more. Okay, but there are ways to banish, to outcast, to shame people, and those are mores. Okay, and then laws are formal norms that are written down and legally enforced by the government. Violating them, you will receive a formal sanctioning. So killing someone, robbing someone, etc. Okay? Again, norms make life predictable by making behavior predictable. We are socialized to follow norms and to play by social basic roles that society assigns us. Norms bring about social order. The reason that we have norms in society, right, is the same reason we have institutions in society based on Emile Durkheim, okay? So they bring social order, and norms are a group's customary social arrangement, how things are organized. Deviance undermines the predictability of these norms, okay? Groups develop a system of social control and formal and informal ways of enforcing norms, okay? So consider the following before we move on, okay? How does a social situation affect what is considered deviant? How does society or an audience affect what is considered deviant? How does time period affect what is considered deviant? And when I say time period, for some of you it might make sense, but for others of you, when I'm talking about time period, how does wearing baggy jeans in the 1990s differ from wearing baggy jeans in 2020? Is it still in style? Or when we see somebody wearing, their jeans below their bottom, are we kind of like, oh, what are you doing? Are we considering them violating a social norm? okay? And also, how does social status affect what's considered deviant, okay? We went over statuses and roles in lecture week 3, okay? How does someone's social status affect what's considered deviant? Again, for some of you, you may understand what I'm talking about. For others of you, you might need some clarification. So for instance, right? I'm a woman. I'm a Black woman. I'm an able-bodied Black woman. I'm a complex person, okay? But imagine, I'll give you a real life situation. I have my license to carry, okay? I have my license to carry. Imagine me getting pulled over in a car I have a valid license to carry, with my gun in the glove compartment. Now imagine someone who is not like me, a white woman with her same license to carry, etc. Okay? Can my race affect, I'm not talking about me, it can affect me, right? But can my race be an indicator to the individual who pulls me over, right? Can my race dictate whether or not I'm seen as deviant in that person's eyes? Okay. For those of you who say no, I encourage you to pick up a newspaper. Go onto Google, okay? We've seen a couple of instances, right? Everyone has their license, everyone, not license to carry, but everyone has, it's our amendment, right, to bear arms, right? I legally have mine. I go to a range every other week, okay? However, again, I can tell you my reality, but you will not necessarily experience it, right? Imagine the stares I get when I go to a range, okay? And I'm not saying these people see me as deviant. Again, that never came out of my mouth, okay? But I do wonder what their thoughts are. So my social status, your race is part of your social status. Another example, right? Let's use Weber, okay? Because Weber was really into class and political party, okay? Can your political party affect how people see you, whether or not they see you as deviant? Okay, yes. Can it affect what's considered deviant? Yes. I hope we're all living in 2020, right? Because if you're a Trump supporter, and there are 3 candidates, guys, okay? The news won't tell you that, but there are 3 candidates, okay? Trump, Biden, and Jorgensen, okay? But if you're a Trump supporter, we'll stick to the binary. If you're a Trump supporter, you consider people who are Biden supporters deviant. If you're a Biden supporter, you consider people who support Trump as deviant. Your political affiliation, which is part of your social status, can affect what's considered deviant. Your gender can affect what's considered deviant. Your sexual orientation can affect what is considered deviant. Whether or not you are able-bodied or disabled can affect what is considered deviant, okay? So go through these questions, pause here, and really think about these questions, okay? And a lot of us, again, some of you might be quick to be like, no, 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 but I urge you, stop and think. Give yourself some different traits, not literally different traits, but think beyond yourself, right? That's a sociological imagination. Think beyond you. Your personal experience is important. It is valid, okay? But so is the environment outside of you. Got it? Okay. Also, Can people in some ascribed or achieved statuses get away with certain behaviors more so than others? Okay. At the end of all of this, deviance is a social construct. What does that mean? Okay, because social construct is a term that we are going to hear from this point forward. Things get intense next week in terms of the topics that we are going to discuss. They get uncomfortable. One of the reasons why talking about these things might be easier in the privacy of our own homes this year is because we get to sit in them and also watch what's going on outside. Okay. But one of the things that I'm really missing, and I tell my colleagues that a lot, is that I miss being in the classroom. So for those of you who know me, I love teaching, and I love teaching face-to-face, period. Okay, so that's part of the reason that this semester has been so hard for me, because it sounds cliche, but I genuinely love my students. I do. I don't know you, but I love you guys, okay? And it's because of the interactions we have. Have I argued with students in class, and has it made it hella weird for the rest of the semester? Yes, but that's part of the experience, and I love it, okay? But deviance is a social construct. Deviance is something that is man-made. That term is man-made. And because it is man-made, because it is constructed by humans, it can also be changed. So our definitions of what is deviant changes over time, which is what makes it a social construct, okay? So deviance is a social construction. Here, your book actually, in the gray section where figure 7.3 is, you actually get a story about a man who actually purchased a hearse with the license plate last ride, okay? And the reasoning he purchased this hearse. Again, for those of you who don't know what a hearse is, you see them at funerals, okay? Yeah. So how would you view the owner of this car? Okay? How would you view the owner of this car? If your mom, if your dad, if your guardian, if your brother, if your sister, if your friend purchased their first car and it was a hearse, how would you view them? Think about it. Okay? And based on your view, specifically if you're like, why in the world would you ever, right? Why does it bother you? Why is it seen as abnormal to drive a hearse as a regular everyday vehicle? Just think about it, okay? Social control. When a person violates a social norm, what happens? All societies practice social control, and social control is the regulation and the enforcement of norms, okay? So we all deal with forms of social control, whether it be in family, in institutions, in religion, amongst our peers, based on state laws, in education, etc. The underlying goal of social control is to maintain social order, which is an arrangement of practices and behaviors on which society's members base their daily lives off of. Think of social order as an employee handbook and social control as the manager, okay? The means of enforcing rules are known as sanctions. Sanctions are an expression of disapproval of deviance or approval of conforming to norms. There are negative sanctions and there are positive sanctions. Negative sanctions range from frowns to imprisonment. okay? Positive sanctions are used to reward for conforming to norms. Most negative sanctions are also informal. We've dealt, if you come from a family, and families come in all shapes and sizes, but if you come from a family, okay, you have dealt with negative and positive sanctions, okay? So sneaking in late after partying all night, right? Some of us got the frown, right? Some of us got some negative sanctions that could have been, you know, I'm gonna take away your PlayStation. I'm gonna take away your car. Time out, etc. Okay? If you do something greater than that, right, and outside of the family, like stealing, mugging, murder, fraud, etc., you could go to prison, right? Probation, parole, etc. Now, positive sanctions are also something that we've all received, right? So if you get good grades on your report card, right, your parents might be, here's $5. Your parents might be like, let's go out. You know, your parents might be like, you know what, if you receive straight A's all through high school, I'm getting you a car at the end of the final semester of the last year of high school, okay? So sociologists also classify sanctions as formal or informal. Informal sanctions, right, emerge in face-to-face social interactions. For example, wearing flip-flops to an opera or swearing loudly in a church may draw disapproving looks or even verbal reprimands, whereas behavior that is seen as positive, such as helping an old man or woman carry a grocery bag across the street, may receive positive informal reactions such as a smile or a pat on the back. Okay, so again, I am very active in my neighborhood, in my city. Last week, right, we decided last weekend, I did have the obligation of picking up trash with my church, with Cataldo Ambulance Services, as well as with the police department here, and we collected a lot of trash on our Saturday. That's all we did, but cleaned up our town, okay? And just the positive informal reactions from people, you know, people who are honking their like cars and their trucks, people who are saying great job, etc. Formal sanctions, on the other hand, so that was informal. Formal sanctions, on the other hand, are always officially recognized and enforce norm violations. So for example, if a student violates her or his college code of conduct, they might be expelled. If someone who speaks inappropriately to the boss, you could be fired. For someone who commits a crime, you could be arrested or imprisoned. On the positive side, because formal sanctions don't always have to be negative, a soldier who saves a life may receive an official commendation, okay? Some other types of social control that your book does not mention, but will be mentioned on our exam that is happening on the week of the 9th, okay, is shaming and degradation ceremonies, okay? So shaming is effective when members of a primary group specifically use it. It's often used to keep children in line in small communities. Shaming can also be part of a public ritual, okay? But shaming is definitely one that is used with children. Now, I'm not saying that they should be, right? It should be used with children, but it's one that I recall growing up with a lot, okay? Degradation ceremony, a formal attempt to brand someone as an official outsider. An individual is stripped when going through a degradation ceremony, is stripped of their identity as a group member. This dramatizes that the member is no longer part of the group. So for those of you who are in high school specifically, if you've ever read The Scarlet Letter, okay, where the woman is branded with the letter A on her chest, and that A stands for what? It stands for adulteress, okay? And she not only is shamed every time she walks out of her house with that egg, because she must, right? It is a type of degradation ceremony, right? Because this symbolizes that she's no longer one of us. We don't commit adultery over here, but she does. And she's not part of us, okay? So if any of you guys recall the Scarlet Letter, that's that. So theoretical perspectives on deviance. So again, I think I'm going to cut this lecture into two just because it's so long, and I realized that last week's lecture was like an hour. So I'm going to cut this into two after I go over the theoretical perspectives, okay? And then I'll pick up with crime in the next one, okay? So theoretical perspectives on deviance. So think about why deviance occurs and how it affects society, okay? There are a number of explanations as to why deviance occurs, okay? Sociobiologists will look for explanations within people. So sociobiologists, again, these are people who study both sociology and biology, and they assume that people have genetic predispositions to deviance, to crime. Psychologists focus on the abnormalities within individuals. They examine personality disorders, mostly, okay? Sociologists dispute that deviant individuals fit a particular personality. So there's a disagreement among sociologists and psychologists, okay? Sociologists will argue that genetics have little influence on deviance. Sociologists will search for factors outside of the individual, not within, not necessarily only within, I should say. So we are looking for social influences that actually recruit people to break norms. So outside factors that push, again, not necessarily push, but recruit people to break norms. Not that they want to, but they are recruited and that they are pushed into breaking these norms, okay? Explanations that focus primarily on the sorry, my face is blocking it. The physiological or psychological shortcomings of those who engage in deviant behavior have been of limited value. I want you guys to realize that you yourselves are not so different from those you call or you see as deviant, okay? Deviant behavior is present in all society. I already want to say what I want to say, but is deviance needed? Okay. And again, some people will say that it is. Okay. So let's take a look at it. The first types of people that we're going to look at are functionalists. Okay. Again, this is a figure taken directly from your textbook. Figure 7.4. Functionalists believe that deviance plays an important role in society and can be used to challenge people's views. So deviance is important to a functionalist. Protesters, such as these PETA members, often use methods to draw attention to their cause, okay? So again, wearing certain types of outfits, doing certain types of radical things that aren't seen as the social norm to cause change can be seen, again, for those of us who are okay with the situation, right? The situations that we're in, those individuals doing those things are seen as deviant. They are disturbing the social order to us, okay? So again, think about these things, okay? And bring 2020, because 2020 has been a hell of a ride. Bring 2020 into this chapter, as well as all the other chapters, okay? Because we're dealing with protesters of all sorts. So if you guys haven't been paying attention, right? Alaskan natives and American citizens have issues right now, right? Again, the United States, for those of you who don't know your history, we have broken every single treaty that we have ever had with American Indians in the United States, okay? Broken every single one. The least, at least in my thought, the least that we could do is allow these people to hunt and fish whenever they want to. Now, for those of you who hunt and fish, right, you guys might have an issue with this, but listen to me for a second, okay? Now, when I was in Humboldt County, I lived on a reservation, the Yurok tribe, okay? Now, I don't know much about, again, I'm not part of an American Indian background, but I do know what I experienced and what I witnessed, especially with the ways that American Indians utilize the things that they hunt for. And every single, how do I say it? Every single piece of that animal, that boar, that bison, you know, whatever it is used, every single part. Nothing is to waste. And they only hunt what they need. They only hunt for what they need. Not over, not below, but just what they need. Now, what we're seeing in Alaska is that a lot of American citizens are upset that the government still allows Alaskan natives to hunt year-round, okay? Which blows my mind, because American natives have a different law than we do, okay? There are general overarching laws that cover us all, right? But based on situations that the US put them into, not voluntarily, like these people weren't asked to walk from the east to the west voluntarily, okay? I don't see why people have an issue with this. Not hunting over at all, not even trying to make a profit for their people, you know? However, I will tell you that most of the crises that we see in terms of whale hunting, dolphin hunting, certain types of boar and deer and lack of during certain periods of time happen when US citizens like go over and beyond, and simply for play, not for the actual, you know, intake in terms of food and clothing and things like that, but for sport. So there are certain times in the year where, you know, the government steps in and is just like, y'all can only shoot one thing a year. Okay, because I don't get it, guys. I don't get the US. Definitely I'm a citizen, but sometimes I don't get the way we are. The way people are. Sorry, that's the empath in me. Like, I don't get it. You know, when you want better for everyone and you just don't understand why people are so selfish. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. But deviance is needed. Deviance is needed. Sorry. I'm just like, it makes me sad because I just don't understand like the hate. I don't understand it. Okay, so let's start off with the functionalist perspective. I hope that you guys can, I actually see a, like, just a control bar over this, so I actually hope you guys can see this, but it's the functionalist perspective, right? Here, Emil Durkheim, again, this is his main view, he's the one who's associated with this view, asserts that deviance is rooted in societal factors, and this includes rapid social change and social disintegration. Durkheim's view predicts that any major upheaval in a group or a society results in increased deviance. In other words, crime. But deviance and crime aren't the same. okay? So again, let's read that again. Any major change or upheaval in a group or in a society results in increase in deviance, okay? So I do wonder, okay, so I do wonder, sorry, it's just one of my students. I do wonder in 2020, from January, or let's just, yeah, from January till now, I would love to see that data because I do think that based on all of the types of protest, the tension, the political atmosphere, I guarantee you there has been an uptick in specifically crimes. Definitely deviance, right? Because deviance is all based on interpretation and it's a social construct, but crime specifically. As community involvement and social integration decline, deviance will increase. So, for example, the economic depression of 1930 would be an example of a macro social change. So think about what happened in 1930, right, with the Great Depression, okay? Think about the outcomes of the Great Depression. What did people do during the Great Depression, right? Suicide, try to get money any way they could, right? Because the economy collapsed, okay? So when money is lacking, crime increases, period, end of story. Crime has no race, crime has no class. When we are all messed up economically, we will all do messed up things. Imagine you lose your house and everything you have today. No money, no food, you are hungry, you are starving. What are you going to do? There's only so much, right? And I'm not encouraging anyone. Trust me, I'm not, right? But what would you do if you became so desperate? Guys, the flesh is weak, okay? And it has shown us what happens when people become desperate, especially financially, okay? Not all outcomes of deviance are negative, though. On a macro level, deviance can result in positive consequences for society. That is, deviance can actually be functional for society. As such, Durkheim claimed that deviance is inevitable and even beneficial for society. Let's see how, okay? Deviance can clarify norms. Deviance can unite society. Deviance can promote positive social change. And deviance will provide jobs, okay? Specifically in terms of policing. That's a guaranteed job, okay? My police department is hiring right now, okay? So sometimes I wish I became a police officer. I don't know if I'd get on the street, you know, in terms of like me, you know, I don't know. I just feel like police officers have or exude this kind of exterior kind of toughness. I don't think I have that. I do think that I have resting bee face, but I don't know. I don't know. So deviance clarifies norms. So by deviance clarifying norms, society affirms its commitment to rules and clarifies their meanings, okay? Deviance can unite societies, or on a micro level, deviance unites groups. Think of the behavior of the Boston bombers in Massachusetts. This is like a close example, right? What came out of the Boston bombing? Boston Strong, okay? So the deviance that these men committed can unite a society, okay? Think about 9/11, okay? that also united the world, oddly, for about 2 weeks. But what came out of that and what continues every 9/11? Never forget, okay? Deviance promotes positive social change, okay? And deviance can provide jobs, okay? When it comes to, so I'm going to go over the functionalist perspective, but I'm going to end because this is going to take a while, okay? And then I'll pick up in another one. But continuing on with the functionalist perspective, just because there are many theories under the functionalist perspective, continuing on with the functionalist perspective, let's go into strain theory, which falls under the functionalist perspective. This is by Robert Merton. So strain theory asserts that access or lack of access to socially acceptable goals plays a part in determining whether a person conforms or deviates. In other words, people feel strain when they are exposed to cultural goals that they are unable to obtain because they do not have access to culturally approved means of achieving those goals, okay? So for example, from birth, we're all encouraged to achieve the American dream, right? Of financial success. A woman or a man who attends business school, receives their MBA, and goes on to make $1 million income as a CEO of a company is said to be a success. However, not everyone in our society stands on equal footing. And an example of this, right, is a person may have socially acceptable goal of financial success, but lack a socially acceptable way to reach the goal. So for example, you might be a man or a woman, but not ever receive your MBA, but make a decent living, but still cannot reach that goal of creating $1 million like empire, okay? Also, you might not have ever gone to school, because it doesn't always have to work this way, right? We live in 2020. You may have never gone to school, or let's say you finish high school and all of a sudden you become $1 million car retail salesman and you're living a great life. Or maybe not a retail salesman, but you're still being successful, financially successful, if you become a drug dealer, okay? According to Merton's theory, an entrepreneur who can't afford to launch his own company may be tempted to embezzle from his employers for startup funds. Merton defines 5 ways people respond to this gap between having a socially accepted goal and having no socially accepted way to pursue it. Let's look at these, okay? So this is known as Merton's modes of structural adaptation. Again, there are 5 needs, okay, of this chart, okay? You can be a conformist, an innovator, a ritualist, a retreatist, or a rebellionist, okay? Most of us are conformist, okay? Society tells us the goal. Let's just say that's financial success, okay? And we also go about the culturally approved means of achieving that success. So most of us will graduate from high school, graduate from college, maybe go on to get our master's degree, get that stable, solid job, and just live our lives, hoping that we get financial success. Most of us are conformist, okay? And there's no shame in that, okay? I'm a conformist, maybe a wannabe innovator, and we'll go into that, okay? Am I a conformist? I think I'm a mixture of a lot of this. But I think most of us, our main side is that of conformists, okay? So conformity, okay? Those who conform do not deviate. They pursue their goals to the extent that they can through socially accepted means. Those who are innovators pursue goals they cannot reach through legitimate means, by instead using criminal or deviant means, okay? So we agree as innovators, if you are an innovator, you agree with the goals. Financial success, we all want to be financially successful, okay? So you agree with the goals, the same goals that conformists agree with, okay? However, you use illegitimate means, okay? So you're going to use things that are deviant to become financially successful. You are going to use things that are criminal to become financially successful, okay? However, it doesn't always have to be negative, okay? Because there are innovators who believe in financial success, who get their start on YouTube, who get their start on Instagram, who get their start on TikTok, who get their start on Snapchat or SoundCloud, etc. Okay? But we are talking about deviants, okay? So we're talking about people who use criminal or deviant means to get that financial success, okay? So we're talking about a pimp. We're talking about a drug dealer. We're talking about someone who embezzles money, who commits fraud, who is bribing people. Get it? That's the innovator. Some of our biggest crime bosses were innovators, okay? And again, I don't want to sound like I'm praising these people, okay? But we're going through Robert Merton's string theory. Whitey Bulger was an innovator, okay? Ritualism, okay? If you are a ritualist, you will lower your goals until you can reach them through socially acceptable ways. These members of society focus on conformity rather than attaining a distant dream. So the ritualist is the type of person who is invited into his boss's office and the boss is like, yo, Bob, yo, Sarah, yo, Mackenzie, here's your promotion, okay? And the ritualist is going to be like, you know what, boss? I'm okay, I love what I do. You know, like, give that promotion to this person over here, okay? So again, you focus, if you are a ritualist, you focus on conformity, okay? Financial success is not everything to you. It's not much to you, okay? But you will do things through socially accepted means, okay? The retreatists, they reject society's goals, so they're kind of like, what? Financial success, that's nothing to me. And these individuals also reject the socially approved means, okay? So financial success, what's that? I don't care. And also kind of like, I don't want to work the typical 9 to 5, you know, I don't want to do this. I want to live. I just want to live the way I want to live. So some beggars and street people have withdrawn from society's goals of financial success, okay? This individual actually sounds like Radar. If you remember the homeless article, this is Radar. He's a retreatist, okay? Again, there are positive aspects to this as well, okay? But we're focusing on deviance. Radar is deviant. The last one is rebellion, okay? If you're a rebellionist, do not confuse rebellionist with retreatist though, okay? The rebellionist, a handful of people rebel and replace society's goals and needs. So not only are they like, you know, I don't care about financial success. I don't care about the socially approved means. In fact, I have my own goals and I have my own needs, and we need to implement these. Terrorists or freedom fighters look to overthrow society's goals through socially unacceptable means. Okay? So terrorists or freedom fighters. And before I end this, this particular slide, let me just say this, okay? Please, if there are terms that are thrown out, not just in the news, but if you see terms such as terrorists and freedom fighters here, don't just run with them. Please Google them, okay? We will go over terrorists, definitely, in, I forget what chapter, but we will go over terrorism, right? Terrorist is anyone who instills fear in a group of people. Okay? So you just need to make sure you're clear on that. Please make sure you're clear on that. Okay? Because I don't like the way that people are throwing out the word terrorist, and that this group of people are terrorists and that group of people are terrorists. Okay? Again, I am an empath, I guess, but it's just, again, words are very important to me. I'm a sociologist. Okay? I don't like words just being thrown out. So in this chapter, in the next chapter, you need to pay attention to the things that come out of my mouth, as well as the things that you are reading in your textbook. Okay? Make sure they're clear to you. Sound good? So I'm going to start the part 2 in just a second, but this is part 1 of chapter 7. Okay? So I'll see you guys in a bit.